I ain't gonna put you in there. Show the camera. They can't even see it, look. They can't see it.
Imagine you are happily living your life, surrounded by your family, when one day, everything changes. Something happens that you never saw coming, and it leaves everyone shocked and confused. This is the story of two people, Morgan and her mother Alicia, and how their lives came to a sudden, heartbreaking stop. What do you do when a loved one disappears, or when something unexpected happens that changes everything? You might be wondering how it could happen to someone you know, but it's always someone else, right? In this story, two innocent people's lives were turned upside down in a way that no one could ever expect. It all started when Morgan Bazemore, a loving daughter, and her mom, Alicia Hereford, were faced with something no one ever should go through. The unthinkable happened when Morgan's boyfriend made a shocking decision. But there's more to the story. A mysterious $250,000 was found hidden in Morgan's car after everything happened, and no one knew why. This money was part of something bigger, and the truth behind it was buried deep inside the crime. How did they both end up in this situation? What led to the shocking turn of events? Let's find out, step by step, how it all started, how things went wrong, and how everything ended in a way no one could predict it. You won't believe what happened, and you might even ask yourself, could this happen to anyone? If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover the truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's begin. Morgan Bazemore was a 23-year-old woman with big dreams. She always wanted to achieve something great in life. She was full of hope, looking forward to her future and all the possibilities it might bring. But there was something in Morgan's life that made things difficult. Her relationship with her boyfriend. Morgan had been with her boyfriend for several years. At the beginning, their relationship seemed perfect. He was charming and seemed to love her very much. But as time passed, things started to get harder. Their relationship was not smooth. It was on and off, with moments of happiness, but also lots of arguments. Morgan didn't know how to make things better, and every time things seemed to get better, the same problems came back again. Morgan's mother, Alicia Hereford, was always there for her. Alicia was 52 years old, and she had a tough but loving personality. She worked hard every day to take care of Morgan. Alicia was the kind of mom who always supported her daughter, no matter what happened. When Morgan faced challenges in school or in life, Alicia was right there to help her through it. Alicia and Morgan had a special bond. They lived together and shared everything with each other. They were close and inseparable. No matter how hard life got, they always stuck together. Alicia wasn't just a mother to Morgan. She was also a mother figure to many of Morgan's friends. Whenever someone needed advice or support, Alicia was the first person they turned to. She had a big heart and was always ready to help others. But even though Alicia and Morgan were so close, there was always one problem that made their lives complicated. Morgan's boyfriend. Morgan's boyfriend was someone she thought she could trust. At first, he seemed perfect for her. He was charming, made her laugh, and treated her well. But there was a side to him that Morgan started to see more and more over time. He had a temper. Sometimes, he would get really angry, and his anger would show in the way he spoke to her. It made Morgan feel scared and confused. Their fights would leave her feeling sad and unsure about their future together. Despite these warning signs, Morgan stayed with him. She hoped things would change, and she didn't want to give up on their relationship. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. She ignored the signs of trouble, believing that one day everything would get better. But things only seemed to get worse. Morgan's boyfriend had a troubled past. He had made many bad decisions in his life. His temper wasn't the only problem. His actions were sometimes even worse. Morgan could see how his past mistakes were affecting their relationship, but she didn't know how to let go. She didn't know if it was possible for him to change, but she didn't want to face the truth. Why do people sometimes stay in relationships that aren't good for them? Morgan stayed with him because she loved him, and she wanted to believe that things could get better. She thought that with time, everything would be okay. But sometimes, staying in a relationship that isn't healthy can hurt more than it helps. Alicia always wanted what was best for Morgan. She saw the struggles in Morgan's relationship and tried to help, but Morgan wasn't ready to listen. She didn't want to admit that maybe it was time to walk away. Alicia knew that it was hard for Morgan to make that choice, but she also knew that sometimes the best thing to do was to let go. When is it time to walk away from a situation that feels wrong? Sometimes it's hard to know when the right time is, but staying in a relationship that makes you unhappy can cause more harm than good. It's important to know when to leave and focus on what makes you happy and healthy. One quiet afternoon, something terrible happened. Morgan Bazemore, a 23-year-old woman, and her mother, Alicia Herford, a 52-year-old woman, were found in a parking lot. Both of them were dead, and no one knew how it happened. The scene was sudden, unexpected, and filled with confusion. No one expected this to happen to Morgan and her mother, who were known to be kind and loving people. The police arrived quickly after receiving a call about the tragic discovery. They saw the car, and in it, they found something that didn't make sense at first. Inside Morgan's car was a large amount of cash, $250,000. The police didn't understand why the money was there. It raised many questions. Why did Morgan have so much money in her car? Could the money be connected to what happened to her and her mother? Was this just an accident? Or did someone do this on purpose? The police were confused because they didn't know if this was a crime of passion or if the money was the reason for the deaths. They started asking themselves, is this just about money or is there something else going on here? The large sum of money in the car was not normal. It was a strange clue that didn't fit in with the rest of the story. The police had to figure out what it meant. The detectives working on the case had a tough job ahead. They started by looking at the crime scene carefully. The first thing they noticed was that the scene didn't look like an accident. There were signs that someone had been there on purpose. But what exactly happened? They didn't know yet. The detectives started by asking the people who knew Morgan and Alicia. They wanted to understand what their lives were like, and if anything unusual had happened before. They also started to look at people who might have had something to do with the crime. The first person they looked at was Morgan's boyfriend. He was someone who had been close to her. The detectives wondered if he was involved, but they didn't arrest him right away. There wasn't enough proof yet. The detectives looked at the car closely to understand more about what had happened. They saw the $250,000 in cash inside. The money didn't have a clear explanation. Was it something Morgan had been given? Did it belong to someone else? The detectives didn't know yet, but they kept asking questions. They also found other clues at the scene. They examined the car's interior, the places where Morgan and Alicia had been, and anything that could help them understand the events that led up to the deaths. The detectives knew that they needed more information, and they couldn't jump to conclusions just yet. As the detectives worked, they started to ask themselves many important questions. The biggest one was, why did the police find so much money in Morgan's car? Was the money connected to the deaths? Was it the reason why Morgan and her mother were hurt? Or did the money mean something else? The detectives didn't have all the answers, and they knew that figuring out why the money was in the car was very important. It could help them understand the crime. But they also had to be careful. They didn't want to assume anything before having all the facts. Another big question was, how could they figure out who did it when there were no clear signs of what happened? They had to look at every detail carefully. Was the boyfriend involved? Could there be someone else who had a reason to hurt Morgan and her mother? The detectives knew they had to be patient and gather more evidence. They couldn't arrest anyone just yet because they didn't have enough proof. The investigation continued, but the detectives needed more clues. They couldn't rush to conclusions, and they had to find the truth no matter how long it took. As they kept asking questions and searching for answers, they knew the case was complicated, but they were determined to uncover what had really happened to Morgan and Alicia. The police discovered Morgan and Alicia in a tragic situation that was completely unexpected. The discovery of $250,000 in Morgan's car made things even more confusing. The detectives working on the case started their investigation by looking at the crime scene and asking questions. They didn't know what had happened at first, but they knew the money was an important clue. The detectives had a lot of questions. Why was the money in the car? Could it be connected to the deaths? And who was responsible for what happened? The investigation was just beginning, and there were many pieces of the puzzle left to figure out. The detectives needed to take their time and carefully gather more information to solve the case. Morgan's boyfriend, at first glance, seemed like a typical young man in love. He was charming, nice, and appeared to care deeply for Morgan. He was often seen with her, sharing sweet moments and looking like any other young couple. But as the investigation into Morgan and her mother Alicia's tragic death began, a very different picture started to emerge about this man. He had a criminal background. The more the detectives looked into his past, the more troubling things they found. He had been involved in shady activities in the past, things that weren't clear to everyone around him. There were whispers about his involvement in illegal matters, but Morgan never seemed to notice. He was good at hiding his past and was always able to convince her that everything was fine. But now, it seemed like his history was coming back to haunt him. As the detectives dug deeper, they started asking, was he hiding something more dangerous? His relationship with Morgan had some strange patterns. Was he controlling or jealous? Did he make Morgan feel trapped in the relationship? Was there more to his love for her than anyone realized? After the tragic event, something strange happened. Morgan's boyfriend left town. At first, it seemed like he was just trying to stay out of the spotlight, but his sudden disappearance made everything feel even more suspicious. Why did he leave so quickly? What was he trying to hide? Detectives quickly realized that his actions didn't add up. If he truly cared about Morgan, why didn't he stay to face the investigation? His disappearance raised many questions. Could he be guilty of something much worse than anyone thought? The detectives didn't stop there. They looked into everything about him, from his criminal record to his actions in the days leading up to the deaths. What they found shocked them. His past was filled with things that pointed to a person capable of serious harm. Was he involved in something illegal that led to Morgan's and Alicia's deaths? The more they discovered, the more they connected the dots. But the truth was still unclear. One of the biggest mysteries was the $250,000 found in Morgan's car. It was a huge amount of money, and no one knew where it came from or why it was there. The detectives were puzzled. Could this money be connected to the boyfriend? Was it part of a deal or a payoff for a crime? Or did it come from somewhere else entirely? The boyfriend was the first person the detectives looked at closely. Could he have been involved in a criminal deal that went wrong? Was he trying to hide something by getting rid of the evidence? As the investigation went on, the detectives started to link the money to him. The more they learned about his activities, the more likely it seemed that he had something to do with the money and possibly with the deaths. But there was still no solid answer. Was it really just about money? Or was there something else at play? Why was the boyfriend acting so strangely? And why was he so quick to leave town? The main question detectives kept asking was, what makes a person cross the line from love to harm? How could someone who appeared to love Morgan so much end up causing harm to her and her mother? Could love turn into something dangerous? And if so, why did it happen? Another key question was, how do detectives find the truth when the suspect seemed so normal? The boyfriend didn't look like a criminal. He seemed like an everyday guy, someone you might meet at the store or see hanging out with friends. But as the investigation unfolded, the detectives realized that sometimes appearances can be deceiving. The boyfriend's seemingly normal behavior was hiding a much darker side. In the end, it was the money, his sudden disappearance, and his troubled past that led detectives to finally uncover the truth. Morgan's boyfriend had a lot to hide, and his actions spoke louder than any words could. But the mystery of why he made these choices and what truly motivated him would remain a chilling question in the minds of everyone who heard this story. How can someone who appears so normal and loving hurt the ones they care about? What would you do if you discovered someone you trusted was hiding something dangerous? In this case, The most surprising discovery was $250,000 in cash found inside Morgan Bazemore's car. The big question was, why was it there? Was the money connected to the crime? What role did it play in the tragic deaths of Morgan and her mother, Alicia Herford? The detectives were puzzled at first. The discovery of such a large amount of cash didn't seem to match the rest of the investigation. The money wasn't just left in any random place. It was hidden in Morgan's car. This raised many questions. Was the money a bribe, a payment for a crime, or part of a bigger plan? To find out, the detectives started looking closely at Morgan's boyfriend. He was a prime suspect because of the strange things that were happening in his life. Morgan's boyfriend had a history of making poor choices, and he had been involved in activities that weren't very clear. The detectives wanted to know if the $250,000 had anything to do with him. The detectives spoke to people who knew Morgan and her boyfriend. They interviewed Morgan's friends and family to learn more about her boyfriend and his possible connection to the money. Some people said that Morgan's boyfriend had been acting strange in the weeks leading up to the deaths. He seemed worried about something, but no one knew exactly what it was. The detectives also learned that Morgan's boyfriend was struggling with money. He wasn't doing well financially, and it appeared that he might have been looking for a way to solve his problems. Could the money in Morgan's car have been his way of paying off someone or getting out of a bad situation? One theory was that the boyfriend had been involved in something illegal. The detectives wondered if he had received the $250,000 as part of a deal gone wrong. Maybe the money was meant for something illegal, like paying off a criminal or covering up a shady deal. But there was no clear evidence of this. Another theory was that the boyfriend might have wanted the money for himself. Perhaps he saw it as a way to escape his troubles. Some people believe that he might have seen Morgan as a way to get the money and solve all his problems. If the boyfriend had a plan to take the money, he could have hurt Morgan to get it. But that didn't explain why Alicia, Morgan's mother, was involved in the tragic event too. The detectives didn't stop there. They kept asking questions. They learned more about the boyfriend's past. Some people said he had been involved in a lot of things that weren't good, but no one knew exactly what. The boyfriend's secret life was harder to understand. Was he involved in something even bigger? Did the $250,000 come from something more dangerous than anyone thought? The detectives also thought about what the boyfriend might have done if the money was a bribe. Could someone have paid him to do something terrible? Or maybe the money was connected to a bigger conspiracy. It wasn't just about the cash. It could have been about keeping a secret or paying off people involved in something more serious. As the investigation continued, the detectives pieced together the details. They started to see that the money might not have been the main reason for the crime. There could have been something personal between Morgan and her boyfriend that led to everything. The detectives knew that sometimes money wasn't the only motive behind a crime. There could be deeper feelings or personal issues at play. The big question remained. Was the $250,000 the main reason for the crime, or was there something else that pushed the boyfriend to act so violently? The detectives thought about the lengths people would go to for money. Some people would do almost anything to get their hands on a large sum. The real mystery was how far Morgan's boyfriend was willing to go to get it. Could he have planned everything out? Or was it a sudden, emotional decision that spiraled out of control? The detectives weren't sure yet, but they knew that uncovering the truth about the money and the boyfriend's motives would be the key to solving the crime. As more interviews were conducted, more clues were found. The detectives continued to dig deeper into the boyfriend's life and the mystery of the $250,000. They needed to understand if money was the main reason behind the tragedy, or if there were hidden motives they hadn't yet discovered. Could the money have been the main reason for crime, or was something more personal involved? How far would someone go for money? Would they do something terrible just to get it? What lengths would you go to if you were desperate for money? What is too far? These questions help us think about what people might do when money becomes the most important thing to them. And in this case, the truth is still out there, waiting to be uncovered. Morgan's boyfriend was caught by the police after they had gathered a lot of evidence. He didn't give himself away immediately. At first, he tried to act normal, but the detectives did their job well, and it became clear that he was involved in something bad. The police discovered things that made it very hard for him to deny his involvement. One of the biggest clues was the money. They found $250,000 hidden in Morgan's car, and this money seemed to be connected to the crime. This discovery made it clear that there was more going on than just a regular fight. As the police looked deeper, they found things that linked Morgan's boyfriend to crime. He tried to hide, but the evidence was too strong for him to escape from. The police also talked to people who knew him and found out more about his past. His history made them even more sure that he was the one behind everything. He had done bad things before, and now the police had the evidence they needed to make an arrest. The boyfriend was arrested, and he knew that the game was up. He had tried to hide the truth, but with the evidence the police had gathered, it was impossible for him to escape the law. After Morgan's boyfriend was arrested, the next step was for him to go to court. This is called a trial. But before the trial could begin, the police and lawyers worked hard to build a case. They needed to make sure they had all the facts right. They had to show the judge and the jury what had happened and why he was guilty. The trial took some time because there were a lot of things to go over. The boyfriend didn't confess to the crime at first. He tried to say that he wasn't responsible. However, the lawyers showed that the evidence was clear. The money, the witnesses, and the investigation pointed straight to him. The trial had many people involved, including lawyers, judges, and witnesses. The lawyer for the boyfriend tried to argue that he wasn't fully responsible, but the evidence spoke for itself. The jury, who were regular people, listened to all the facts. After hearing everything, they decided that the boyfriend was guilty. He was found guilty because the facts showed he was involved in the crime. Morgan's boyfriend was charged with several things. The most important charge was manslaughter. Manslaughter means that someone caused another person's death, but it wasn't planned out ahead of time, like murder. This was the charge he faced because, although he caused harm, he didn't mean for everything to happen in the way it did. But that didn't mean he could get away with it. He also faced charges for money laundering because of the $250,000 found in Morgan's car. The money didn't just appear out of nowhere. The court believed that the money was part of a plan that had gone wrong, and it was linked to the crime. When the trial was over, the boyfriend was given a sentence. The judge decided what his punishment would be based on what the jury had decided. Even though he didn't confess right away, he was still guilty. The judge sentenced him to several years in prison. This was the legal consequence for what he did. But the case didn't just end there. The lawyers argued about how long he should stay in prison. Some people thought his punishment wasn't enough. They felt that he should stay in prison for a longer time because of the harm he caused to Morgan and Alicia. The boyfriend's actions caused pain to many people, and the court had to decide how long he should stay in prison. How do we ensure justice is served in cases like this? In cases like this, it is important that the law looks at the evidence carefully. Everyone should have a fair trial, and the law should be followed so that the right punishment is given. The police and the courts work together to make sure that justice is done. Does the system always work the way it should? Sometimes the system doesn't always work perfectly. People might try to hide the truth or make excuses for their actions. But in the end, the truth comes out. The job of the police and the courts is to find that truth and make sure that the right decisions are made. If someone confesses to a crime, do they always get the punishment they deserve? Not always. If someone confesses, it is important to understand why they did it and what the law says. Even if someone says they are guilty, the courts still need to make sure the punishment fits the crime. Sometimes, people get lighter punishments if they admit their guilt, but the courts still have to make sure that the punishment is fair for what happened. After the tragic event that took the lives of Morgan Bazemore and her mother, Alicia Herford, the world around them was never the same. The families and friends of Morgan and Alicia were left in shock. The pain of losing two loved ones was overwhelming, and no one knew how to move forward. Morgan's family and Alicia's family felt a deep sadness. They couldn't understand why this had happened. Why did someone take their loved ones from them? What was the reason for such a terrible crime? These questions filled their minds, and they struggled to find answers. For the family, each day without Morgan and Alicia felt harder than the last. The hole in their hearts grew bigger, and it seemed like no amount of time would help them heal. Morgan's family couldn't understand why Morgan's boyfriend, the one person she trusted, could cause her so much harm. He had been part of her life for years, and no one expected him to be the one who would end it all. They had always thought he was just another guy she loved. But now, their hearts were broken with the truth that he had hurt her in the worst way possible. Alicia's family was just as heartbroken. Alicia was a kind and loving mother. She was a backbone of their family. How could someone hurt her so badly? What had gone wrong? They wished they could turn back time and change what happened, but they knew that wasn't possible. The family members asked themselves many questions. They wondered why this had to happen to Morgan and Alicia. What made the boyfriend do such a thing? Was it money, anger, or something else? The family could not find the answers they needed. No one understood why the crime had happened, and they were left with nothing but grief and confusion. After the investigation, the boyfriend was arrested. The police had found evidence, and he was put on trial. The family followed the trial closely. They wanted to see if justice would be served. They wanted to know if the person responsible for taking their loved ones away would be punished for what he did. The family felt a mix of feelings as they watched the trial. They were glad that the boyfriend was facing the law for his actions. But at the same time, they realized that no punishment could ever bring Morgan and Alicia back. They wished there was a way to undo everything that happened, but they knew they had to move forward. When the trial ended, the boyfriend was convicted, but the family didn't feel completely satisfied. They were glad he was held responsible, but no amount of justice could bring their loved ones back to them. The family felt the pain of their loss even more after the trial. It was clear that justice could not replace Morgan and Alicia. The family began to focus on healing. It was hard, and it didn't happen overnight. Each day, they took small steps to feel better, but the pain was always there. They leaned on each other for support. They talked about Morgan and Alicia, remembering the good times they shared. They found comfort in knowing that, while the pain of their loss would never go away, they could honor their loved ones by keeping their memories alive. The community also reacted to the loss. People who knew Morgan and Alicia were shocked and saddened. Many of them came together to support the family. They sent messages of sympathy and helped in any way they could. It was clear that Morgan and Alicia had touched many lives, and their loss was felt by all. In the end, the family learned that healing from such a sudden loss takes time. It wasn't easy, and there were still many days filled with sadness. But they slowly began to find a way to cope. They knew that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant learning to live with the pain and finding a way to move forward while carrying the memory of Morgan and Alicia with them. Key questions remain for the family. How do you heal when you lose someone so suddenly? How do you move on when someone you loved is taken from you without warning? For the family, the answer was simple. They had to take it one day at a time, lean on each other, and keep the memory of Morgan and Alicia alive in their hearts. As they continued to heal, they also learned that justice meant more than just a court decision. It meant finding peace in knowing that the person responsible was held accountable, even if nothing could bring Morgan and Alicia back. In this tragic story about Morgan Bazemore and her mother Alicia Herford, we learned some important lessons. Morgan and Alicia were two kind, loving people who never expected their lives to end so suddenly. The person who caused their deaths was someone Morgan trusted, her boyfriend. But what was his motive? Was it just about money, or was there something else going on? The detectives found a large amount of money, $250,000, hidden in Morgan's car. This money was a big part of the story, but it wasn't the only reason for what happened. The boyfriend's motive seemed to be about money at first, but as the investigation continued, people started wondering if there was more to it. Was he hiding other secrets? Did he do this because he wanted something more than just the money? These are questions we still don't know the full answers to. But one thing is certain. Money can sometimes cause people to make bad decisions, and it can change the way they act. So, what can we learn from this? First, it teaches us that we should always be careful about who we trust. Sometimes the people closest to us, the ones we think we know well, can turn out to be dangerous. This is why it's important to listen to warning signs, like when someone becomes angry or behaves strangely. If we see these signs, we should talk to someone we trust and get help. Second, we learn that money is powerful. Sometimes it can make people do things they wouldn't normally do. We can see from this story that the boyfriend was willing to hurt others for money. This is a reminder to be careful with money and not let it control our actions or decisions. The story also teaches us about love. Morgan and Alicia were close, but Morgan's relationship with her boyfriend turned out to be dangerous. Love is important, but it should be healthy and safe. If a relationship ever feels wrong or scary, it's okay to leave and ask for help. No one should stay in a relationship that makes them feel unsafe. After hearing this story, we need to think about a few important questions. How well do we really know the people around us? Sometimes, people act in ways that surprise us. We might think we know someone really well, but there might be things about them we don't see. It's important to pay attention to how people act, especially if they start doing things that seem strange or dangerous. Can we always trust those closest to us? It's hard to believe that someone we trust could hurt us, but sometimes it happens. This story shows that even people we love and care about can make bad choices. We should always make sure that the people we trust are kind and respectful. What can we learn from this story about love, money, and trust? We learn that love should make us feel safe and happy. Money can sometimes make people act in strange ways, so we should never let it control our decisions. And trust is important, but we have to be careful about who we trust. We need to make sure people deserve our trust. This story about Morgan and Alicia makes us think about what we would do if we were in a similar situation. If we saw someone acting strangely or becoming angry, would we know how to help them? If a friend or family member was in a relationship that seemed unhealthy or dangerous, what should we do? We need to always be careful when we see signs of trouble in relationships. If we think someone is in danger, we should talk to an adult or someone we trust. It's important to get help right away to keep everyone safe. Also, when we see someone we love making bad decisions because of money or love, we can try to talk to them. Sometimes, people need someone to remind them about what's right and help them understand the risks of their actions. In the end, we all need to be careful who we trust and make sure we stay safe. If we learn the lesson from Morgan and Alicia's story, we can help make sure something like this doesn't happen again. Always remember, it's okay to ask for help if something doesn't feel right. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.